Hey everyone, James here and welcome to Shard TCG, and today we're going to be doing a creature type tier list of set 1 of Shard TCG. Let's just dive straight in. We're starting off with the Elementals. So as you can see, I've got 6 tiers here and we are putting Elementals at the E rank. They are the least effective at being a mono creature deck. That is the category as to how I am ranking these today. I also would just like to add that I am doing this on the tier maker website, so there'll be a link in the description below where you can go on and actually rank these yourself and submit your own votes if you disagree with anything that I've done today. It's always fun to open up debates and get people interacting with each other, so you have access to be able to do that right now in the description below. So even though Elementals do have some support cards like Scroll of Divergence and Elemental Convocation, the biggest withdrawal to Elementals is the fact that they work with creatures of the same element as them, and even though there are 21 Elementals, they all don't interact with each other because they are different elements. And unfortunately, that is a good enough reason to have them at the lowest tier. They just don't have very much link-up play. But on the same hand, in any other deck, throwing an elemental into that deck is normally a fantastic thing. So they are very viable in Shard. They are not the worst cards in Shard. But as for a mono creature type deck, they are just not viable until we add some more support cards, which we're hoping to do in set 2, and will bolster Elementals. And I would love to see some pure elemental decks in the future. I think it's really exciting. We just throw in some cards that allow them to interact with each other a bit more, and I can't wait to see that. The future of Shard is exciting. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. Okay, and moving on to the D tier, we are going to be starting off with Amphibians. Now, the big thing about Amphibians not being in a higher tier is their lack of synergy with each other at the moment. Yes, they do have Metamorph, which allows them to progress to a higher form. Take the Ranotetra Tadpole, for example. We can see it has the Metamorph title right in the middle of its stat screen there. By using the Metamorph title, we can transform the Ranotetra Tadpole into a fully grown Ranotetra at the cost of it having to rest. So even though you can get a large creature out on the field very quickly, the real thing that has Amphibians lacking at the moment is their lack of variety, and they don't have that engine card. They need that one card that is pure Amphibian, and it is all about boosting Amphibian or getting Amphibians out onto the field more effectively. We hope to address that in set 2 of Shard TCG, and we should definitely be seeing Amphibians moving up a tier list or 2. But Amphibians aren't alone in this category. They are accompanied by Anthonians. So for those of you who don't know, Anthonians are humanoid type creatures, so tool users, and basically more animalistic life forms of human. So the reason I made the difficult decision to add Anthonians to the D tier is really down to their lack of numbers. Right now there are only 5 Anthonians available, and it just doesn't give them enough variety to justify having them in a higher tier right now, because even though they are quite effective with their tool usages, how they use items such as Edge of Malediction, a binding spell that will boost their combat damage, they are just lacking that little bit of muscle that makes the difference between playability and dominating a game. They don't dominate games yet. Though we have creatures like the Fairy with Bag of Holding, so when this creature is summoned you may search your deck and draw 1 binding spell. We have a lot of synergized binding spell adjacent effect, and the path is so very clear to where Anthonians will be heading in the future. They are not fast summoning creatures. You don't get out a lot of Anthonians at once, but when you do have an Anthonian out, make sure that you have the binding spells to reinforce them. Give them the axes and the swords and the orbs and all the items that'll boost them up and make them very strong and very formidable. I can easily see Anthonian jumping up to perhaps an A tier in set 2. And from what has been tested so far of the new Anthonians in set 2, that is very achievable. But right now in set 1, unfortunately were a little overlooked and weren't fine-tuned. But the potential is there, the root is there, and I'm really excited to see Anthonians flourish in the future because they will dominate. And the third creature type that I'm placing in the D tier is worms. Now, I think worms have a great concept in place in tier 1, but once again, it's the same as a lot of the others. They just don't have enough variety yet. They just need more worms to work more efficiently with each other. And that will come in the later sets. Many of our worm cards, like the Krusk and the Vermidax, love to use effects that consume to gain benefits. Now, this can be very costly because consuming your own creatures is essentially sacrificing field presence, so you have to make sure that these effects are somewhat worth it. But that is down to you as the player to go and find the right combinations, find the cards that will synergize with each other and benefit each other. That's the whole point of a TCG. So go and have fun doing that. The big disadvantage with worms in a mono creature type deck right now is that they all want to consume each other even though they benefit from consuming themselves. So in one way or another, one worm is missing out on using its effect in place for another worm to use its effect. So the synergy isn't quite there. But perhaps in the future we'll find something to unlock the worm's potential. Perhaps it's a single card, perhaps it's a combination of cards, or perhaps we'll just have to accept that worms aren't a mono creature type deck and they must synergize with another creature type to become more efficient, to increase their tier level. And before we move on to the C tier creatures, I would just like to say thank you very much for watching this video. It really means the world to me. And if you've left a like or are about to leave a like, thank you again. It may not seem much to you, but it really does mean the world to me. Thank you so much. Okay, and we're starting off the C tier with Reptiles. Now, I'm sure if you know Reptiles in real life, Reptiles in Shard TCG will make perfect sense, as Reptiles love sleeping, they love resting, they love bathing in the sun and conserving their energy. And that's what we've tried to integrate into Shard TCG. A lot of the Reptile effects are based around resting the creature or sleeping the creatures to gain those bonuses, those effects. And I think Reptiles are a good example of a nice mid-tier creature monotype deck at the moment. They can have their good days and they can have their bad days. It really depends on whether you allow them to rest. The big key for Reptiles is Lizard Lore. A lot of things are based around this one spell. Unfortunately, I don't feel like one spell can justify a higher tier set at the moment, but perhaps in set 2 or beyond that, I think we can see Reptiles really progressing up that tier list. Now, for those of you who don't know, Lizard Lore is just very good at waking up Reptiles after they've rested, which can be great for using the Reptiles effects perhaps more than once. Or just to have the Reptile prepped for when it's your opponent's turn so the Reptile is able to defend itself. Okay, and who is going to keep the Reptiles company in the C tier list? Unfortunately, it has to be Aberrations. Now, I think this is a difficult decision because there are some very strong Aberrations, but it is just down to their lack of synergy once again. If you had a mono Aberration deck in set 1, there is just a lack of Aberrations wanting to help each other. Individually, they are very powerful. I think we're just going to have to find in future sets they need to learn to cooperate more. And we do want to bring that to Shard TCG because we want to see some Aberration decks and we want to see what destruction people can bring through using Aberrations. Here's an example of a very strong Aberration effect, Minorian Enhancement. During your main phase, spend 1 mana or 1 ward. This creature deals +1 combat damage until the end phase. Yes, it is a temporary attack boost, but the potential means that this creature can take out pretty much any other creature as long as you have enough mana and enough wards. This makes this card very strong, but Aberrations as a whole, like I've already said, are just lacking that cooperation. In the cards that we created for the Demon Structure deck, we added Aberrant Evolution, which helps Aberrations able to level up, essentially going from a 1-shot to a 2-shot, or a 2-shot to a 3-shot, or even synergizing with demons, even though that doesn't really affect this tier list as we're looking at them as mono creature types and not as how they cooperate. But in the future, perhaps you could see a lot of Aberration and demon combinations, especially through cards like Aberrant Evolution. Alright, and the next creature type that I'm adding to the C tier list, and it pains me so much because if you've watched my videos, you know how much I love this creature type, but I'm going to have to give it to the Golem. Unfortunately, I believe golems are very mid-tier as of set 1, and that is mainly down to their lack of options in early game. There is only a couple of cards that are actually one-shard creatures, even though one is incredibly strong, which I'll show you on the screen right now, the Alkanac. The Alkanac may be a one-shot creature, but it still requires 3 mana to summon. But its effect, Mana Battery, allows it to rest and gain mana back. This is a key for Golem decks right now, and I think this is the real card that actually drives Golems to that mid-tier level. But for right now, I think Golems are firmly set in mid-tier. They do have the potential to challenge high tier, but it is mostly down to very lucky draws. There are specific cards that you need in place to make Golems have that high tier at the moment, where other decks just do it more efficiently. Okay, and another creature type that pains me to only give mid-tier because I have put so much love into these creatures is the Imp type. Now, for those of you who don't know, Imps love dying, they love being destroyed, they love being attacked in general, and it makes Imps quite difficult. When you're facing up against an Imp tech, you don't want to destroy the Imps, but at the same time, usually you will have to destroy the Imps. Now, there are more Imp type cards in set 1 of Shard TCG than any other creature type, with 11 different types of Imps. So in terms of variety, you are spoilt for choice. Unfortunately, a lot of the Imp effects are more element based than actually creature type based. It's something we want to rectify slowly in the future. We're adding a few new ones in set 2 which are more creature type based rather than element based, and there'll be a few more in the future sets accompanied by a lot of Imp support cards which we love creating. They're all very comical and very based around destruction of Imps or triggered from Imps being attacked or destroyed. And I absolutely love designing these Imp focused spell cards. And I think similar to the Golems, the Imps are capable of pulling off some very good wins, but it is based around specific cards right now. Now, the first creature type that I've placed in B tier is the Arachnids. The Arachnids have a very noticeable strategy that a lot of people will pick up on right away. They love to counter attack. Their counter-attack damage is normally quite exaggerated compared to other creature types, as you can see from the example that I have on the field, and some of their effects will also be based around enhancing that advantage. The only issue that doesn't push Arachnids into a higher tier is their lack of game finishing moves. They don't have the high attack power to actually inflict on your opponent's life. High counter means that they are very dangerous to break down, because if you come at the Arachnids will hurt you back. Unfortunately, when it is the Arachnids' turn to attack, they just don't have that muscle to get them over the finish line and finish off games. And the other creature type that I place in the B tier list along with Arachnids are Beasts. Now, you have quite a few options with Beast creatures. I believe in set 1 there are 9 Beast creatures that you can choose. Now, Beasts can be quite strong, but I think they are just lacking a few more support spell cards to really push them into those high tiers. Now, I genuinely believe if we just add 1 or 2 more spell cards to set 2 of Shard TCG that are focused around increasing the efficiency of Beasts, we can see Beast deck popularity really start to boom. Okay, the part of the video you've all been waiting for. The A and S class. These are the high tier creatures. And we're starting off with demons. Now, I know the angels and demons weren't a part of set 1, but we always refer to them as 1.5. They're not quite set 2. So we don't want to leave the demons out of this. And of course, the demons are a very strong set. And that is probably because they did get a little bit more focus as they were being built into their very own set rather than a part of Shard TCG Origins. Now, a big thing that makes demons strong is that they introduced more shard generating spell cards. Because the idea behind demons is that they require soul shard to increase their power. Essentially, you're making the deal with the devil. You're giving souls in exchange for their powers. And a great example of that kind of power is Behemoth. He requires 1 shard per turn to stop him from being destroyed. And for a 4-shard demon with 10-10-10 stats, that is a very good deal. Long term, yes, he's going to cost way more than a maxed out 5-shard creature. But that is the price for using demons. You need a lot of shard generation. There is no doubt in my mind that demons are very potent. As long as you can generate those shards, the demons will deliver you a victory. And I believe what will naturally accompany demons at an A class level is the angels. Now, unlike demons, angels do not require souls to do their dark deals. They require life. They are creatures of life. And activating their powers using that life energy is what angels do best. And just like demons, the angels have the same amount of options as demons. They have 3 support spell cards and 7 creatures to choose from to mix and match to create your mono angel or demon deck. We always knew that we wanted to make a strong impression with the angels and demons, and I think where they stand right now statistic wise, they achieve that without being overpowered, that is. But both creature types definitely added a new dynamic to the game, and we're happy to have them in our homemade TCG. Now, in my opinion, the A tier category does get a little fuller than some of the other categories, but I think that just means that Richard and I are quite happy with those creature types as it stands. The insects will be accompanying angels and demons along with 2 other creature types, which will leave 2 final creature types that will be going into S rank. Now, I can picture, if you are following Shard quite closely, you might be able to predict these final few, but we will just have to wait and see. Now, what really justifies insects being A tier is their speed at which they can get out onto the field. They are a real swarming creature type. Even though a lot of them are of low level, you can get them out very, very quickly with the use of spell cards and creature effects. Insects just hate being alone, and when they are on their own, they get squashed like a bug. So if you are facing off against an insect deck and you aren't quick enough to wipe out those pests, they are going to overrun the field. They are incredibly efficient at it. And ultimately, they win games through sheer numbers. And as well as insects, I am also placing aquatics in the A tier. Now, with aquatics, I could have really seen them also being in the B tier because they lack the numbers. There are only 5 aquatic creatures in set 1 of Shard TCG. But right now, the aquatic type is just so very strong, and that is down to just one combination of the Aberrations and the Lacedon. Now, the Aberrations has a very strong attack, but the disadvantage is it has to return at the end of its turn, which usually means that you are down 1 shard. But the Lacedon likes to be summoned when a creature is returned to the hand, and this one combination propels aquatics right up to A class, because if you can get those 2 creatures out on the field, you have such a dangerous combination. Now, we think this level is a little bit beyond set 1 of Shard TCG, but when we have set 2 creatures come out, we can see this starting to become more of a normal strategy as Shard TCG combos become more established and more efficient. But right now, that wombo combo really propels the aquatics right up to A tier. So if you are a fan of aquatics, then I would definitely suggest keeping a good eye on these creatures. Okay, and now we're down to our final 3, which is Dragon, Plant and Undead. I am putting Dragon in S tier. And I am putting Undead in S tier, which leaves Plant left over to fill in the A tier slot. So this is how the final board looks, and I will be covering Plant, followed by Dragon, followed by Undead to finish off, and just to say why I think they go in these tiers. So the big thing about Plant is that they can naturally gain vitality. Plants love to just grow, and as you get them on the field, you just establish your garden, grow your plants as much as you can, and vitality will increase their health, and their health makes them stronger to kill, makes them harder to kill. Plant in set 1 also has several great support spell cards that allows them to grow faster and help them establish themselves on the field. So if you have the right combination of spells and plants at the start of your turn, you can be very hard to remove off the field. And I think the one thing that stops plants from being S-class is actually the insect creature type. Because the insects are so efficient at swarming, they can tend to undo plants' hard work of trying to grow and establish themselves on the field. And that one major weakness from being rushed by something as efficient as the insects just drops plants below S tier. Whereas the insect creature type not achieving S tier is mostly down to their lack of larger, stronger creatures. And I think a lot of people before even beginning this video would have thought dragon will be up there. And I did debate it for a little bit because I was asking Richard, how well do dragons actually work as a mono type? And I actually recall Richard playing a mono dragon deck, testing it, and it is incredibly strong, even though there aren't a lot of options at lower level to actually help dragons progress to actually getting out those larger, bigger, stronger dragons. I think there is still enough there for dragons to justify being the leader of the pack. Now, dragons love to lower the cost of their creatures, and it doesn't matter that you have such large dangerous creatures in your hand. You can get them out even if you don't have the shard amount by lowering the cost of the dragons artificially with other support spells and lesser lower level dragons. And I think out of all the other creature types, the dragons are simply the best at finishing games. They have the power, they have the summoning ability. The dragon type will simply win you games. And lastly, we have the undead creature type, and the reason that is of S tier rank is because simply it utilizes the graveyard so well. Yes, they can be a little bit slow until they can get a few creatures in the graveyard to resummon back onto the field, because that is where their power lies. They can summon creatures onto the field so much easier from the graveyard than actually from their hand. So yes, they can be a little bit slow, but usually end game, if you don't take out this creature type fast enough, they will destroy you in a similar fashion to dragons with sheer power. The undead have some incredibly strong creatures in their arsenal as well as a decent amount of support spells to help them progress through the game. So this has been my tier list for Shard TCG Set 1. Of course, if I was introducing what we have in Set 2 of Shard TCG, this tier list would look incredibly different. But that is it from me. Thank you very much. Don't forget to hit the like button. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button as well to see more content like this. And I hope to see you guys next time. Goodbye.